Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Oh, I think they're doing a great job. A lot of them are.
Good afternoon, Dwayne. How are you?
Not too bad, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today with Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
But I do have some questions.
There are more questions than answers.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today. If you're ready to talk, we're willing to listen.
Well, I really enjoy this program today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
May God bless every person.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you so much for this terrific Thursday's edition of Talk Today. And as we invite you to be a part of it, if you are not yet online listening and watching, well, go, because we have amazing guests each day. And today, without exception, even more so as we talk about things of national importance relative to our electoral boundaries. So join us right after this.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. And Cayman Airways. Call them on 949-2311 to book your nonstop flights to Los Angeles and Panama.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255.
Courtesy of Flow,
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. And, we build Thursdays for this season as thoughtful Thursdays. And I think it's even more fitting when we have a discussion as later today as we talk about our electoral boundaries. And I'm honored that they have not only availed themselves to the reappointment, they have, been so amenable and gracious with their time and coming to the media. They were on just recently with Mr. Art. And here we have the distinct pleasure of welcoming Dr. Lisa Hanley as Chairman of the Electoral Boundaries Commission. Good afternoon.
Good morning. Good afternoon, Your
Buenas tardes. Alex, good afternoon, Your Excellency. Speaking into being from your lips to God's ears. And Miss Adrienne Whip, Ma'am, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon, Mr. Sterling. I'm fine. How are you all?
Oh, I'm truly grateful for many reasons, and perhaps as we share, you'd allow me to remind myself, as I ask others to consider, we live in a fantastic place where we have freedom of expression and thought, we have a freedom to assemble and to speak up, but we also have that corresponding responsibility in so doing. And, with what you shared publicly from your discussions on wills and estate planning to just being you, we're reminded that we can do much if we do it together.
Yes, I think we have a sort of responsibility to be community-minded.
Mm-hmm.
And, our island has given us a lot, and we ought to be willing to give back, and I've tried to do that over my years.
Well, thank you very much. And to Dr. Steve McPhail.
Good morning, afternoon, Sterling. It's good to be with you. I think we have several dates that I did not fulfill. We're supposed to be on your show and other things.
Well,
it's good to be here. I was sort of happy that they asked me to come back on the Electoral Boundary Commission. This is for the second term. I enjoy the work. Mm-hmm. I enjoy people. I enjoy interacting with people. Of course, sometimes I can be a little hard on people, asking hard questions. Sometimes I do that. I want to see how the people are really thinking about their country. I am a dedicated person. I think my country, my family first, and then my country is next. Those are it. In that order. Is where my love is.
I think you elicit greater edification through your evocative sort of prose, getting people to think and to champion the status quo. And the fact that, as Ms. Adrian said, you sort of echoed the idea that you missed a few dates coming, but you have a role to play. And if I can, with the greatest of deference, recognizing that this month of May we celebrate our youth, our children, October we'll celebrate the elderly. If we could, as a society, look to our parents and see that they're still actively engaged, mentally and physically, and maybe we'll see it incumbent on us as the younger ones, if you would allow me to say that, to step up to the plate, to take up the mantle, and to appreciate that the society won't evolve, won't advance, won't remain safe, stable, civil, unless we as a populace, and the electorate in particular, are actively engaged. With that in mind, Dr. Hanley, I would invite, if you would be so inclined, to pretend I'm in a classroom, you're the panel of lecturers, and we're getting education. There's no exam, there's no written paper. This is about learning, not testing. This is about participation and active engagement as opposed to recitation. And I think I'm mindful because I'm so excited and passionate about the topic, but so enthused by what you're willing to share, that somehow we kind of neglect our responsibility. We hide behind our employer and our employment, our position, our title, and saying, boy, I can't do that because I'll offend somebody who's... No, this is about us wanting to participate in a healthy democracy, recognizing that there are many who serve ultimately so that we have that right, but then we also need to be responsible. So as the chair of it, two questions. How important is it for us to have an electoral boundaries commission? What is its role, purpose? How do we as the electorate influence the direction of such a thing? Can we? Should we? How do we?
We think that you should.
Okay.
We think that the public should come out and tell us what they think. And that's why we're having a series of public hearings this week and next week.
Mm-hmm.
What our job is we are looking... In 2015, you moved to a new electoral system, one man, one vote. And we drew, my colleagues and I here were the same commissioners in 2015 that drew the single-member constituency boundaries. The Constitution requires that every 8 years we revisit these boundaries, mostly because of population shifts. And there have been dramatic population shifts, a lot of growth in Cayman over the last 10, 11 years. And so our job is to look at the constituencies as they are now and determine if the boundaries should be adjusted for population reasons. And in fact, they should be adjusted because you've had uneven growth. As much as there has been a lot of growth, there have been some areas that have grown more than others. Baden Town, for example, has grown enormously, more than 30%, while other areas like the Sister Islands have actually lost population. But overall, you're increasing population, and so at this point in time, your constituencies are not equal in population, and where you want to adjust the boundaries a little bit to make sure that they are more equal in population.
If I made an ask, and it's only because, well, we advertised you coming on, many people heard you early on Mr. Hart's show, there's an interest, even though there may seem to be a reticence among some to say what they're thinking publicly. I'm honored that they'll share their views over breakfast or just casually, but it's from an informed, truly sort of sincere perspective. So in redrawing our districts, we have 19 now. Is it that we could either enlarge it to more than 19? Could we consolidate into one? Is it anything off the table? Is everything on the table?
So no, you can't. We are obliged to draw 19 districts. However, it's the Parliament could make a decision at some point to increase the number of seats. They could even make a decision through a constitutional change to decrease the number of seats. But That falls outside of our remit.
Yeah. And thanks for that. And the reason why I'm asking is because sometimes I think, Dr. Steve, you shared that the level of civic engagement and civic education is lacking. And there are those that I sat with who say, well, no, we can't. We're stuck with this. No, we can't change it. Now I say, well, if we change from A to B, we can go back to A, or we can go to X. But if so, how? And as Dr. Hannah shared, it's for our parliament. So, Dr. Steve, from that perspective, what should the public be doing in order to make sure that as the boundary commissioners, that they share their views with you?
They should get as much information as possible. And to get that information, you can't sit at home and then next year or the next year or the next year expect some changes to happen. Change is inevitable.
Yeah.
It's going to happen whether that we like it or not, because that's part of evolution.
Yeah.
So the problem that I find is that these constitutional things, the average lay person doesn't seems to be interested in them because I don't think they understand them well. And that's because they have not been educated enough to understand them and to be able to make the decisions. And a lot of people don't like to come to the meetings because they're embarrassed to ask questions. That I find that, and the reason why I say that is because even when there's not a survey like what we're doing, asking people for their views, even with political meetings in traditional districts, people will not come and sit in the chairs to hear the politicians. They'll stand around, or they sit in their cars and they'll honk their horns when a point has been made that they agree with, but they're reluctant to be seen. And I find that I have never seen that in many other countries that I have traveled and visit. Usually, when politicians have meetings, or when you have things like this where you have the boundary commission trying to gather information as to whether or not to adjust boundaries or not, that would be something very, very important to other communities. Very important.
Perhaps after the break, Mr. I'll start back with you and the importance of that. Why is that important? It's not just about balancing the numbers so that each of the 19 seem to be equal in terms of the electors, but what is the importance and what's the significance? And maybe we can talk to some of the things after the break. All right, we invite our listeners to stay tuned.
Are you kidding me?
Hey girl, what's wrong?
My eyeliner foundation just ran out and I have to leave Savannah in 15 minutes.
That's easy. Just stop at Savannah Pharmacy. That's where I get all of my makeup, and for a great price too.
Really?
Really, girl. Where are you going?
To Savannah Pharmacy, duh.
Wait, I'm coming too. Ran out of my favorite nail polish.
Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village provides you with more than just prescriptions. Savannah Pharmacy is just around the corner with everything you need and the hours you need it. Visit us today for fast, efficient, and professional service. We are here as a team to assist you while taking care of your health. Call us today at 946-3336.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointments.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
From boat days to beach gatherings, leave the catering to Subway. Choose from small and large sandwich platters, double meat wrap platters, and top it off with optional cookie platters for dessert. Or ask about our Subway box to go with the option of 6-inch or foot-long sandwich, 1 cookie, and 1 bag of chips. For all occasions and celebrations, let Subway focus on the food so you can focus on the fun. Visit subway.ky for catering options. Subway. Eat fresh.
You deserve a unique vacation this year, one with easy non-stop flights from Cayman. Cayman Airways offers more non-stop flights to and from the Cayman Islands than any other airline. Now you can add Panama and Los Angeles to your travel bucket list. Skip the hassle of connecting flights. Panama is just a 2-hour non-stop flight from Cayman. And Los Angeles? Get there in less than 5 hours non-stop aboard Cayman Airways. Call 949-2311 or visit CaymanAirways.com to book your Los Angeles or Panama getaway today.
Attention North Side and East End residents. The Department of Environmental Health North Side and East End residents bulk waste collection will take place between May 22nd to the 27th. This bulk waste collection will replace the traditional year-end collection. Household appliances, furniture, and other items too large to be handled by the weekly DEH collection crews should be placed by the roadside where it is easily accessible to DEH collection crews. Metals and vegetation should also be separated from other bulk items. Do not obstruct the roadway or storm drains or place tires, construction and demolition waste, hazardous materials, or electronics. For more information on the North Side and East End bulk waste collection from May 22nd to the 27th, please contact DEH's Solid Waste Management Section at 949-6696.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. And I'm really grateful that not only we have the caliber of the representation on the Electoral Boundaries Commission, but the willingness to share with us here and with continuing the public discussion. I understand that there's a meeting next Wednesday, around about 1:30ish. Dr. Steve, Ms. Adrienne, that you're facilitating.
Well, we're having a meeting this evening too in Bodden Town, but we also have one at the public library. I'm not quite sure when, and the public can come to that one. I mean, the public can come to any of the meetings. It's an open presentation, and basically you're not confined to your districts. And we do want to hear from the public what their views are on the boundaries, how they're operating, how they see everything going. We need to hear from the people.
All right. Well, we do have a caller. Actually, a caller times 3. Okay, let's go to our callers. Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, good afternoon, Sterling. And good afternoon to your Dr. Steve and your panel. I didn't really catch everybody.
Yes, sir. Dr. Steve Ifield, together with the chair, Dr. Lisa Hanley and Ms. Adrienne Webb, are our guests. Thank you for that.
Yes, certainly, and good afternoon to all of them as well. This is Dominic Ebanks. I, for one, when I was younger, never took real note of political boundaries. It was usually land boundaries. In the older Cayman, people were always rowing about which tree were moved and all that kind of stuff, and they mark things in that manner. Today, most people in general, not just people today, but a lot of people don't really know anything about the political land boundaries to that extent, much less the land ones. My view of the political boundaries, for instance, let's look at Georgetown and West Bay. The land boundary between Georgetown and West Bay used to be at the Georgetown graveyard, but what we'd call Delworth gas station, cutting straight across what we'd consider the Mount Trashmore. So Mount Trashmore, most of it would have fell on Georgetown, and the Georgetown graveyard would have been in Georgetown, but everything else coming down was West Bay. So West Bay itself now starts down at the Ritz-Carlton, all right? And it's probably cut straight across rather than sort of on a diagonal slant. But it's shrunk by a huge voting capacity, because we're talking about electoral boundaries as well, right? And I think the West Bay electoral boundaries start, and at that point what you call the tip of Georgetown meeting West Bay, somewhere around there. So of course the land boundary, I'm not too sure if that has been fully adjusted, but I'm quite sure it is, and it starts at the Ritz-Carlton, and that's now where our political boundaries start. But I was a bit shocked to see that, West Bay once started further up, but now it's further down. And I can understand when it comes to having to, shift around certain votes or numbers or whatever. I just don't understand why the district itself boundary had to shrink. All right, that's one. As far as the political boundaries are concerned, the way they're carved out is a bit questionable, especially if you look in some areas like West Bay. It just wraps up a particular I guess they tried their best to get everything done. It's almost like, you no matter how you cut it, it's not going to make everybody happy. So I personally don't have an issue with how they cut it up. Once the numbers are fair, because that's what we're looking at when it comes to the political point, the numbers of electors. But again, I was, looking at it from the point that a lot of people don't have the understanding of these boundaries, be it the land boundary and the electoral boundary. And the problem, hopefully I'm not talking too fast or too slow, but the problem seems to arise from our educational system, where in the school, at least by middle school, we should have a particular, whether it's in your, geographic class or whatever class you're going to have, math class, something to let you know about these boundaries that we have here in Cayman, even if it's just a half an hour where the study being practical and trying to physical, so that when our people go out on the road, they'll know that, hey, I'm outside of the boundary of so-and-so, and I know where I am in a sense of speaking, or when they look on a map, right? So that's the education part of it. And so anyway, just a little bit from where the educational part plays such a big role. I mean, take for instance, today, most of us that work in administrative jobs, at least that, or let's say anybody in general who uses a cell phone, we're pretty much using something that functions off of an Excel, sort of a Windows Excel system, right? And because it's based on something built on formulas and all these algorithms and stuff. And you look at the same problem with education when it comes to that particular issue, is that a lot of kids should have that particular, even whether it's an app or a program, if you want it, whatever you want to call Excel, it should be somehow implemented into our math classes alone, so that when our kids come out and work in these administrative jobs, they have an idea. Because the average person that comes for a job will say they know Microsoft, this and that, but they really don't know nothing. And it's the same problem again going back to our education, right? And again, that happens with our electoral boundaries and our land boundaries. The education system isn't educating us on it, which is but again, I personally also, I'll make my conversation short, but I feel that the politicians themselves should have a right, now that we're broken into such small constituencies, to be able to, whether they put it up on a billboard within their constituencies, just showing all of these boundaries and giving more information. So it's just a lack of information. But I think with our voting system, I find the one man, one vote thing just as good as when it was 4 people and you had 4 votes. Really, it doesn't, in my point, it just causes a in problem where the politician becomes the problem, because if you're from one end and you go to a certain politician, you complain about a problem and your problem is at this address, they defer you or, to the other representatives so that you can get assistance. So those are some of the things with the thing. But we always found out that if you went to Georgetown and told them about your problem in West Bay, they usually deferred you back to the West Bay politician. So, trying to blame that as a fault, I don't see that really being a problem. It boils down to the individual who we have elected to make sure that he or she take care of their constituency by educating them as well as much as possible. We see a few politicians trying their best to, put it out there in billboards and stuff, but you got to be so careful that it might be interpreted as campaigning, because, everything has its boundaries. So I'll stop there, since I've hit my boundary and probably taking so much to call. But again, I want to thank you all for listening, and that's pretty much my concern. My question again was, I would like somebody to answer as to why West Bay has shrunk from one point to the next, from the stoplight at Delaware gas station down to Ritz-Carlton.
All right.
Now, that's the question. Thank you.
Thanks, Dominic. Thanks. Thank you, sir. It's your turn.
Well, we've had several definitions of West Bay's traditional boundary. One was that it came, as he said, to the Georgetown Cemetery. Another one where the Boundary Commission sort of put it. And we've also heard him say that it starts at the West Bay Cemetery and across from the fire station. So personally, I've been around. I know you say I'm young, but I've been around a number of years, getting on the older side now. And to my knowledge, West Bay, in my childhood, always started at the West Bay Cemetery and into West Bay. 7 Mile Beach Road was a sort of no man's land in between West Bay and Georgetown. And so I guess it's a matter of what you grew up knowing. But to me, West Bay started at the West Bay Cemetery, and thereon it was West Bay. And I want to commend the young man for calling, and I agree with a lot of what he said, that we really need to be educated about politics, and it really ought to start somewhere in schools. We've been having these public meetings, and I must say that the attendance hasn't been great. We would have been much happier to have had more people come out. And I think that is because there isn't that much of an awareness of how politics impacts on our lives. But everybody's life is affected by politics, and we all need to get involved and play our role.
All right, let's respectfully take the scheduled break, come back, invite our callers to share, and I'm really grateful for this opportunity. Please stay tuned.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Here at Savannah Pharmacy, our pharmacists do a lot more than just count out your pills and fill prescriptions. They undergo extensive education in the study of how the human body uses and responds to medicine. They have also built up years of experience in real-life counseling on how to take medication safely. Our pharmacists are on the front lines in keeping our society healthy. Don't risk it or hesitate. Contact us or schedule a consultation with one of our pharmacists today. At Savannah Pharmacy, we care about your health.
Wouldn't it have been grand if you had purchased land 30 years ago? It may not be 2020, but a perfect vision has never been more clear. Caymanbrac and Little Cayman, poised for growth with an eye on the future. Your land, your history, your future. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
You deserve a unique vacation this year, one with easy non-stop flights from Cayman. Cayman Airways offers more non-stop flights to and from the Cayman Islands than any other airline. Now you can add Panama and Los Angeles to your travel bucket list. Skip the hassle of connecting flights. Panama is just a 2-hour non-stop flight from Cayman. And Los Angeles? Get there in less than 5 hours non-stop aboard Cayman Airways. Call 949-2311 or visit CaymanAirways.com to book your Los Angeles or Panama getaway today.
I've got some beautiful clothes. I know just where they go. Puritan Cleaners.
Puritan Cleaners, now using the most popular and eco-friendly cleaning solvents. 2 convenient locations to serve you: Savannah Countryside and Eastern Avenue, Georgetown. Drive-through, rain or shine, free pickup and delivery services available. Call Puritan Cleaners 949-7104. Also ask about our in-house discounts. Puritan Cleaners, you feel good when you look good.
Puritan Cleaners 949-7104. That's 949-7104.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon, welcome back, and thanks again to Dr. Lisa Hanley, Ms. Adrian Webb, and Dr. Steve McField for not only joining us, but for accepting the reappointment to the Electoral Boundaries Commission. We do have some other callers with your questions. Let's hear what the listeners have to share. Good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for calling.
Good afternoon, Dane.
Hey, good afternoon, sir. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see Dr. Spiel on there. I haven't talked to him in a long time, but he's a good guy.
Yes, thank
and
you.
the ladies, I'm not quite sure all of them, but I know some of them, so God bless you all.
Yeah, Ms. Adrian Webb and Dr. Lisa Hanley. Yes, sir.
Yeah, man. I'm calling because I am a little concerned about the splitting up of let's go back to the 1950s, 60s, and back then 40s, when we had, I don't know how many Western men we had, but they were all just Western men, one from this district and other on. And everybody sat down when they had a problem with the problem then, and they all sat down together, and they decided what was most important. And then they would say, okay, well, this district needs this more than the other district. So let's go ahead and do that for them first because they need it worse than the other one. And they would work together like that and get things done. And it was always a budget back in those days that you couldn't touch it. There was a reserve we had that nobody, we didn't have no projections about how much money we were going to make and all that kind of thing for the next, 5 years or whatever. They had that put aside because in case of emergency, that's what that was for. They didn't touch that for anything else.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is that when we split the districts up. Now, where we got, I don't know, we got 4 different little constituencies, not districts, because you've got, and one thing I don't understand is, why is it that it's part of the Constitution now, that we should have district councils? But it seems to me that people got the idea, some of the politicians got the idea, that they're in where the constituency is. It's this constituency council, and I don't like that. I like because everybody's working for his own little piece of thing there. Why can't we get? There's only 4 districts or whatever it is, or council. So just go ahead and get that together and put the people from all the different districts. You get so many from each district to make up the council, and then when we work together, we're working for everybody. But the thing is that I'm really concerned about is that this whole thing about breaking West Bay up into these little constituencies, that was a ploy because some of them figured that they must have figured it out that if I got 100 people voting for me, the likelihood is I can get those 100 the next time. You see, there's no other constituencies that can interfere with that vote. So now they get back in, and then they if they're good, they continue to do good things. But if they're not, then they can, it bothers me, and I'm not criticizing anyone. I'm just being practical. That's the stuff that I'm concerned about is when they break it up like that, and they got a district. I don't know if anybody got a district council yet or a constituency council.
Mm-hmm.
You see, but the Constitution, I think, says it's a district council. Everybody should have a district council. And that's what we need, one council for everybody. And the other thing is, I'll finish there, is that we used to call the different, what they call the opposition now, they were the backbenchers. Now the opposition, that word opposition, indicates now that don't vote for them because they're going to oppose everything we did. Or you know what I mean? We're really convoluting the whole system by all this breaking up and these changes and adding this and adding that. And then the other thing I don't like is that we don't have a council that says when the politician says, I want to do this or do that, that it goes to a particular council that are aware of all the finances and everything else. And then they decide if it's a good time. That's what the old group was good. They would then decide if it was worthwhile or is it possible to do certain things.
Mm-hmm.
But now when they can get somebody in the house to vote for them, not the public, but to get somebody in the house to vote for them, that they can do these things, then they go ahead and do it, and then we find out down the road it costs us X number of dollars. And good example, killing warners, $5 a head. I just read something the other day where it was 2 million or something like that, warners that were killed. But I don't see anybody out there killing warners anymore, so I don't know who's killing them. But we got to be careful with these things.
Mm-hmm. Value for money and the... All right.
Yes. That's what I'm saying. Anyway.
Yeah, man. Thank you, sir.
My 2 cents for the day, but I want you guys to comment on things like that because this is what I think will destroy us if we keep breaking up and giving little portions to this one and that one, and everybody got their gun.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much. And we do have another caller if you want us to just, unless you wish. All right, take the call.
Yeah.
All right. Good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you for sharing.
Good afternoon, Dwayne, and good afternoon to your distinguished guests, the special commissioners there.
Hello, Mr. Samamba. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Billy.
Good afternoon. Well, I've been following you. I watched you yesterday on OC's show as well as your meeting in Bordentown online.
So you're still in Toronto?
Pardon me?
You're still in Toronto?
Yes, I'm still in Toronto. So that's where I'm calling from, yes.
Okay.
Well, first of all, just a very general comment on the whole idea of splitting the like Cayman into various constituencies. Now, I know that your remit is not to say whether or not that was a correct decision, but rather to deal with boundaries. But it is indirectly related in that I have found that since the constituencies were split up, it appears almost as if it's unnatural to a lot of Caymanians, because I found even during the campaign, when you would ask a candidate, well, are these the issues that you find of concern in West Bay West, for example? It was almost like an odd question, because there's just about no issues that would be only for West Bay West without being the whole of West Bay or without being, half of Cayman. So I'm not quite sure if that was really the best way to deal with some of the issues they wanted to deal with, which was accountability and so forth. But really, the two questions which I really have, and these relate to the poor attendance that you have gotten up to this point. To be quite frank with you, I don't think it's got anything to do with you as commissioners. I would imagine so. But I wonder whether people are starting to tune out a little bit because, one, Cayman has got so many incomers, status holders, PR holders, and work permit holders. The number of people who really feel, I think, have got a stake in the politics of the country, who will be mainly the indigenous Caymanians, first of all, they appear to be very few. And then on top of that, I wonder whether they are starting to tune out to all political processes, or maybe some of them, because they feel that their turf is being taken away by foreigners anyway, and that their political power in the future, that they are not going to have that power. And maybe they are saying, look, we want you to deal with us, the issues relating to status grants and holding on to our turf, before we deal with these other peripheral issues about boundaries and so on and so forth. So really all I'm saying is I'm asking a question. Do you believe that perhaps the lack of enthusiasm so far with your commission might have to do with the fact that people feel that the fundamentals of their complaints are not being dealt with? That is my question.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Dr. Lisa, Chairman, or Mr. Steve?
Well, Billy, I agree with some of the things you've said, but the reality is that change is coming. Change has already begun. The population will never be the same, and and this answers part of the questions the other caller raised also. This is not the 1950s when the population was 12,000 people. We're now going up to 100,000 people, 80 plus, and with the vast development, we are going to hit the 100,000 mark very soon, and that is for the politicians to understand what's happening and to see whether or not they want to continue this, or whether or not they will say enough is enough. Because personally, I believe that more is not better than enough. But I think Billy, I think it's complacency. I don't think that is because their questions or their affairs are not being looked after. I think Caymanian people are not the kind of people who are proactive. If this turns out to be something that raises controversy, they will then quickly jump onto the bandwagon and voice their opinion and say, oh yes, we told you we shouldn't have done this. I think it's the lack of education, really. Because unless you have the kind of education that drives the interest, people are not going to be interested. I understand that people are also interested in paying their bill and paying their CUC bill and having enough money to buy food from the supermarkets and the high cost of living. But I think it's gone in Cayman is beyond that. It's gone to the fact that we're Caymanian people sort of really don't care about these things. They say leave this to somebody else. Leave this to what they accept as a higher power. Leave it to the powers that be. They should know what they're doing. I think that's the sort of attitude that I find.
Well, I agree with what Dr. McField has said. There's a sense of complacency with the average person. When elections come around, of course they're very interested, and they come out to meetings, and there's a high voter turnout at election time. But in between elections, they seem to think that, oh, let the politicians look after that. We don't need to worry about that. They'll take care of that. But it's important for all of us to become involved, because we need to let the politicians know what we would like them to do. And something like the Boundary Commission, it is important because it is going to impact who you're going to vote for and all that sort of thing. And we would really encourage them to come out and tell us their views. I know a lot of the issues that they have raised have been more constitutional matters, which is not really our remit. We can listen and we will make a note as to what the people told us, but that has to go back to the MPs for them to do something about that. So we can only deal with boundaries. We can note the comments on the Constitution, but we can only make a decision about boundaries and hope to do the best that we can.
So when we return from our news break, through you, Dr. Hanley, perhaps we'll ask the question, what are your duties and remit? What can you do? And maybe ask, what are some of these, perhaps Mr. Adrian, you can join in, some of these matters that are constitutional that you've received, so that people can appreciate the distinction and that there may be an overlap, but there's a disconnect to some extent. After the break, we can address that. All right, join us.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
Your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
The Headline News is brought to you by Health Services Authority.
With your latest headlines, I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins. The Department of Education Services, the Department of Sports and Cayman Cricket invite the public to come out to the Truman Bodden Sports Complex at 9 a.m. on Thursday, May 25th for the Girls Under 11 Cricket Rally, and at the same time on Thursday, June 1st for the Boys Under 11 Rally. The event will see children from 13 schools competing in a 6-a-side tournament and 6 over games. For more details, contact Carrie Jones at kjones@cayman.edu.ky or David Bernard at developmentmgr@caymancricket.ky. In international news, more than 20 rivers have burst their banks in Italy, leaving 13 people dead and forcing thousands from their homes after 6 months' worth of rainfall fell in a day and a half. More bodies were found on Thursday after almost every river flooded between Bologna and the northeast coast, 70 miles away. Some 280 landslides have taken place. The oldest, most complete Hebrew Bible has been bought at Sotheby's, New York for $38.1 million, becoming the most valuable manuscript sold at auction. The Codex Sassoon is thought to have been written about 1,100 years ago. It is the earliest surviving example of a single manuscript containing all 24 books of the Hebrew Bible with punctuation, vowels, and accents. These are your headlines. I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins.
HSA's cardiology clinic is now located at Smith Road Medical Center. Our cardiology team provides expert care and treatment for heart conditions such as coronary artery disease, heart failure, arrhythmias, hypertension, congenital heart diseases, among others. The new location offers state-of-the-art cardiac diagnostic testing, including echocardiograms, ECGs, and stress tests. To contact, call 949-8600. At HSA, your heart matters to us.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
The Headline News are brought to you by Health Services Authority.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette brought to you by the Ministry of District Administration and Lands. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands.
Born September 25th, 1947 at Watering Place, Cayman Brac, Royce Adolphus Dilbert was the firstborn son of Hallen and Grace Dilbert, née Tibbets. Like many of the men of his time, he spent many years at sea. During his breaks from sea life, Mr. Dilbert employed his diverse skill sets. He He worked at Alfred Scott's block factory as a mechanic with Eston Scott, and his uncle Bergman Dilbert performed dynamite blasting in Cayman Brac with the late Reverend Lee King, as well as worked at MRCU in Grand Cayman. He was also an entrepreneur selling fruits, cars, and tires, and painted and repaired vehicles. His mechanical skills proved immeasurable when in 1979, working in the Campeche Bank oil field, Mexico, his ship was chartered by Halliburton to supply material to cap the exploratory well which blew out in Mexico's Bay of Campeche. In 1981, he retired from sea and took employment with the Cayman Brac Power and Light Company as chief engineer, where he remained until his retirement in December of 2018.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette brought to you by the Ministry of District Administration and Lands. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands.
Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands, the ultimate staycation experience. Your culture, your freedom, the land that time forgot isn't gone. It's your Sister Islands.
Discover all that our Sister Islands have to offer.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for joining us. And thanks to Dr. Lisa Hanley, Ms. Adrienne Webb, and Dr. Steve Ifield for joining us. And maybe as we're talking about potentially, I guess, redrawing our electoral boundaries, to facilitate a sense of parity amongst the electorate, each one having the same amount of electors. So what are, Dr. Hanley, what are the duties, what's the terms of sort of remit for the Electoral Boundaries Commission?
So our job is actually quite narrow. Mm-hmm. We are not addressing the electoral system in general. We're not talking about moving to a different system or going back to the old system. We're simply redrawing the boundaries of the constituencies that were put in place in 2015. In 2015, Cayman made a move from the old system to the new system, based, I guess, in part, at least, on a referendum. The decision was made to introduce single-member districts. And my colleagues and I, we were the same commission, we drew those single-member districts. We drew 19 of them. And now the Constitution says every 8 years you have to revisit these boundaries and see if they have to be adjusted because of population shifts. So we are very specifically simply adjusting the boundaries. It is outside of our remit to do things like add an additional seat. Now, we've had recommendations from people in public hearings saying we should add a seat or two, and we will talk about that in our report, but it's up to Parliament and the Constitution to add that seat. Mm-hmm. It's not in our remit.
So from Cayman's perspective, what sort of recommendations, if any, can you make other than saying that this district should be enlarged because the population has, or that this electoral boundary should be shifted this way? What sort of recommendations can you make?
So we can relay what we've heard, but we cannot actually do something like recommend a change in systems. That's beyond our remit, and I doubt if we would do that anyway.
Well, thank you for that. I deliberately use the word recommend because any reports that are made, those are what we look for. What are the recommendations? I don't want it to be semantics, but I want us to understand that your role as the Electoral Board is very specific and limited. So, again, help me for my personal identification, maybe help others. Let's say in the District of Georgetown, there are 7 electoral areas.
That's correct.
And let's say, make it easier, the section either between West Bay proper and Georgetown, let's say you decide that this section had a growth as it's between Georgetown and, say, Bordentown. This had a shrinkage. Would it be then that the boundary would shift to accommodate the population shift? Is that what you could recommend or relay?
What we have been doing is we have described a number of alternative approaches that we are considering, and we have sought the advice of the public. That's why we're having these public hearings, as well as some parliamentarians and others about what they think about the alternatives that we are considering. And we really hope that we get a lot of input, because we are going to take account of this input. It's very important to us in making these decisions.
Can you share now what some of those alternatives that you're considering could possibly be?
So one alternative is to actually, the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association it sends their international experts to the Cayman Islands every election. And every election, starting in 2015 and 2021, when you've had single-member constituencies, they've pointed out that the constituencies are not equal in population, and that international standards suggest that they be within 10% of the ideal population size. So that's one alternative we're considering. Let's redraw these so that all of the constituencies are within 10%. But of course that has dramatic impact in places like Northside and East End, which are very small. Of course the sister islands are also very small, but the Constitution protects those two islands, guaranteeing them 2 seats. So we're not touching that. So that's one alternative. Another alternative is to pay attention to the traditional district boundaries and to make sure that all of the constituencies fall within the traditional district boundaries. But because of the growth in Bordentown, it should have 5 seats, and we need to get to that 5th seat from, in the second alternative, we would combine Northside and East End and give them 1 constituency, and then take that second constituency and move it over to Bordentown.
So still maintain the 19.
That's correct.
But give Bordentown, because of its population growth, the 5th seat.
That's correct.
And we want, am I to understand, that just for a sort of the voting process, maintain an odd number as opposed to an even number in the House, or does that matter?
So that is outside of our remit, but I am going to get to that as a 4th possibility. The 3rd possibility is to, and at some point, literally this should be enshrined in the Constitution if you want to protect Northside and East End as population growth continues
as we did
in other
Cameron
places.
Back.
Exactly.
Okay.
But keep Northside and East End as separate constituencies. But if we're working with 19 seats, that means that the constituencies, the 4 constituencies in Bordentown, will all be dramatically overpopulated. They will not get the 5th seat. So that's a 3rd possibility. It was pointed out that another possibility, and again, this is outside of our remit, is to actually add seats. If we added 1 seat, we could give that seat to Bordentown, so that there would be 5 constituencies that would be that their population merits, and we could keep Northside and East End as separate constituencies.
Okay, so hopefully as we are listening to you, we're understanding that there are the traditional districts, and then there are the electoral sort of constituencies, separate and distinct. But for us, as harking back to the earlier caller, we still think of West Bay as West Bay, Georgetown, but as separate and distinct from the electoral constituencies. With that in mind, and 2 other things. When is your report expected to be submitted? Is this going to happen next week? Is it 10 years from now? I mean,
somewhere in between.
Somewhere in between. Soon come.
Sometime this summer.
Okay. And if it's not improper to ask, we have potentially an election that will occur no later than April 2025. It could be earlier, I'm told. Not that there's any discussion or speculation, but for it to be later, there has to be some constitutional changes. So will this be anticipated that it would happen before that, and any redrawn boundaries would come into effect prior to the next general election?
So we're submitting a report that includes recommendations. It is then up to Parliament to decide whether to accept our report or not. And they can also accept our report but decide to modify the plans, the constituency boundaries that we put forward. So we're going to hand the report over, and the rest is up to Parliament.
So your report's not binding?
That's correct.
They could take it all, some of it, discard it, amend it. It's for our Parliament to act as they so choose.
That's correct.
Okay.
So we could give this to them, and they could change it in time for the next election, but we have no power over that.
Okay. And then in relation to Northside and East End, from Cayman's perspective, two things that many have asked. One, just like the carve-out in the Constitution for Cayman Brac and the Cayman, some would say, well, if we did it for them, why can't we do it for the other districts in terms of preserving that? But secondly, I understand from a land mass perspective, Northside and East End are much larger, or as large from the land mass, even though the population is small, than, say, the other districts. Even though the population is small, the land mass is bigger, so in time, should they not have their own district as opposed to being combined?
I'm going to answer that from the international perspective. From the international perspective, I can tell you that there are some countries that take into account land mass. But these are countries that look like Australia and Canada. They don't look like Grand Cayman. It's just not something that I could conceive of being considered here, that the island is very small. So when you take the land mass into account, it tends to be places where you're talking about thousands of miles.
But then, respectfully, and certainly Dr. Steve and Ms. Adrian, again, I'm so glad that we have people who may not publicly come out to meetings sometimes, but they're willing to share their views sometimes in a much more sort of familiar setting. But they've shared that if we are so small, that's probably the reason to preserve our uniqueness, to preserve the unity that we have, as opposed to the potential division that may come by, can I borrow the caller's comments earlier, cutting the country up into little bits and pieces. International plans aside.
What I would recommend, if I were king, is if the traditional districts that we've been talking about are very important, I would not just protect Northside and East End. I think I would do what lots of countries, including my own, the United States, has done, and that is say every traditional district should be guaranteed at least one seat.
Okay.
And that would preserve Northside and East End until somebody does something about the traditional boundaries, if they cease to matter at some point.
Could that be, under the powers within the EBC, could that be something that you could put into the report? Or
we could recommend it, but we could recommend that it be included in the Constitution. But we could draw boundaries such that East Side and
East and North Side
are separate constituencies.
So given the uniqueness of Cayman to some extent, and the sort of penchant that we have to preserve some of the traditions and the like, may I then ask then with that, given, if I, Dr. Halley, misunderstand what you shared, we could keep those traditional districts, at least one representative for each one, so that would be 6. Could that then mean that if we were to extrapolate that, we could extend it to mean that potentially our voting system, again for the Parliament to decide, is that where we could take that and...
No, what I meant was you could guarantee each one
one
seat,
yes,
at least one. But of course, most of the traditional districts would have more than one seat.
No, I'm with you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but given that the Parliament, with that in mind, because there are many who said maybe we look at it in such a way that we do just that, have one at least for each district, whatever that representative, whether we do a bicameral system. Now, I do appreciate this is not within the EBC, this is more constitutional. but then given the preservation. Ms. Adrian, with that, we like the traditionalists. A Georgetowner is a Georgetowner, whether they're living on the cusp of West Bay in Georgetown or Georgetown in Bordentown. The people from Savannah likewise, and the East End and the North Side likewise. They came back.
Well, what we have found is that the people are very attached to their traditional districts.
Yes, ma'am.
West Bayers, whether it's from West Bay Cemetery or Georgetown Cemetery, would have been West Bay. Georgetowners consider themselves, wherever they are, a Georgetowner. Same thing with Bordentown,
yes, ma'am.
And particularly with East End, North Side, and Kimmenbrack. So the people have always asked that we respect their traditional boundaries. And under the remit for the commission, we are told to take that into account.
Okay.
Natural boundaries and so on, which we've tried to do.
So this is where I think Dr. Steve's comments, and you've all alluded to it, it's important for us, in particular the electorate, to attend the meetings, to provide our feedback, to be knowledgeable. There's a term that I think we've heard often, and some must probably understand it. Would you help me? Gerrymandering. What is that? How does that play in? I'll go on the premise that I have no idea what it is. So, Dr. Hanley?
Oh my goodness! Well, you're asking an expert at this.
Okay.
I'm from the United States. The word gerrymandering came from us.
Yeah.
And we're the experts at it.
So I'm told.
So what this means is it could be one of two things. It could mean that the political party in control draws the districts such that the party has more seats than they might otherwise have by carefully constructing the seats. It could also mean that the incumbents together, both sides, sit down and draw seats so that all of the incumbents come back. They win their next election.
Yeah.
So you're in a situation where instead of the voters choosing who will represent them, the representatives are choosing their voters by drawing the boundaries just exactly as they wish they would be to ensure that their supporters are in their district and their donors are in their district. Yeah. That's gerrymandering.
With the greatest of respect, what is the potential, as unintentional as it may have been, that has occurred in Cayman, could occur whenever we draw or redraw our electoral boundaries?
Your constitution was put in place in a way that ensured that couldn't happen.
Could not happen, okay.
Well, at least the construction of the Boundary Commission is such that the Boundary Commission would not gerrymander. We don't even have the information that would allow us to do that, but the reason that you have been bringing your chair in from outside the country is I couldn't gerrymander if I wanted to because I don't have the information that requires that kind of process.
And I appreciate you allowing us to ask but also answering and listening to your response. I'm sort of taking a bird's eye view of our 19 electoral boundaries and sort of visualizing, well, this boundary goes like this as opposed to like that, and to what impact. But again, it's for us to come to the meetings to see how the boundaries are drawn, what potential makes up an electoral boundary, and then be, as Dr. Steve said, better informed. So when the report is sent to Parliament, there's a debate, hopefully, we'll have a better perspective. We do have a caller. Shall we? Good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hello, good afternoon.
Afternoon. How are you, sir?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon, sir.
Afternoon, sir.
How are you?
I'm good. Just a question, a query came to my mind when you were talking about the adding of constituencies due to increase in population. Like it says right now, Bordentown, because of the growth, would need a fifth seat. Is this ad infinitum, or because as the population continues to grow, not only in Bordentown but in all the other districts or wherever, would there be a need to continually add another seat per se? Because it's potential. Potentially, you could just keep adding more and more seats. Is it some criteria that it because it reaches each constituency has to have a certain amount of voters, and then if it exceeds that, then you have to look to make a new constituency or something like that.
That is not. There are some countries that have constitutions that say that, you know, as you add more people, you add more seats. But that's not the case here. And it isn't our job to add more seats. I was simply saying that there were suggestions that from our audience that you add seats. But you're right, you can't just keep adding seats. So the reason for adding the seats was the situation of Northside, East End, I think, and the fact that you would have to combine them to give Bodden Town the extra seat that it deserves. So there are different ways to deal with it, but I hear what you're saying. You can't just keep solving the problem by adding seats indefinitely.
Exactly. Because and another problem is I don't think that East End and North Side would stand for a combination, because, you know, people want their traditional electoral boundaries or districts or whatever they want to call it. Because I can see the turmoil and the contention that it would cause if you were to join East End and North Side and have one representative. Then they would say, well, from North Side or from East End or whatever, you know, it could lead to a lot of turmoil. But yeah, I just wanted to get that point clarified in my mind, whether in fact there is a need or a plan to keep adding additional constituencies because of population growth, because that would be totally unsustainable, and you know, I don't think that would work.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for that. And again, this is where I guess the tradition, the expectation of having something that not only representative but respect what we have. But the population increases, and to the caller's point, if just because we have more people in the country and therefore at some point more voters, does that mean that we need to have more cost by having more parliamentarians?
That's a decision for Caymanians in a different, say, in the Constitutional Commission to make. I mean, there are reasons for increasing the number of MPs that are divorced from just creating more constituencies. I think your MPs have a lot of work to do, and they might welcome additional seats. But I think that if traditional districts are very important, I would like to see them protected by the Constitution. But we did protect them the last time, and we would like to hear what the public thinks about protecting them this time. Pretty much so far, we've heard that they would like to be protected, and that North Side and East End should be kept separate. But this is just going to continue to be a problem as the population, unless the population shifts to East and the North Side. This is continuing to be a problem that will be even more difficult to grapple with in 8 years, and that's why I recommend, if they're very important, to actually guarantee every traditional district at least one seat.
How would that then work? There's 6 sort of traditional districts, as we know, right? So if we give one, irrespective of the final number, the composition of the parliament, how would that work practically relative to the election? So as a voter, I have a thought, but I would like to hear your further thoughts.
It wouldn't change anything. It would just change how the seats were allocated. So, for example, in the United States, every state, despite the population, is guaranteed at least one representative in the House of Representatives. And then, after you give all the states one, that's 50, you still have 400 seats that you then allocate on the basis of population.
Right.
So if you protected all of the districts, you would allocate a constituency to each of the traditional districts, and then you would take the remaining seats, let's say 19 minus 6, 13. No, no, one of them is already in the sister islands. So you would take 15 and you would allocate them on the basis, 11. I got my numbers mixed up, but you would allocate the rest of them on the basis of population.
And the reason I'm asking is that, thank you for that. I'm thinking to the U.S. as well. If I understand it correctly, they have 2 senators, right, per district.
That's because we have a bicameral system.
Right.
I wouldn't complicate this with that.
Well, thank you. And the reason some of our parliamentarians have advocated for an appointed Senate. And maybe we can chat a little bit about a break and then come back and see, because I wrote down, and well, I'll tell you what I was thinking. You know what I know what I was thinking? Well, I'm going to order cassava cake and custard top cornbread for my... Well, stay tuned for Talk Today.
They say variety is the spice of life. And that's why at Subway, we're introducing the new boneless hot sub. Say what? The premium sub brings new ingredients like spicy breaded boneless chicken, French's crispy fried onions, and buffalo wing sauce, bringing a zesty and flavorful experience with every bite. Add some of your favorite veggies, cheese, and ranch sauce of your choice of freshly baked bread for the ultimate boneless hot sub. For a little spice in your life, try the new boneless hot sub from Subway.
So good and tasty.
And make it a meal with a drink and chips or cookies. Subway. Eat fresh.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab. Blood test, x-ray, and mammogram, all of that is MedLab. Affordable fees and friendly service, a full professional team. MedLab is always comfortable, MedLab is always clean. For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. Become a member today. With 6 flexible life cycle funds, we help you plan for financial security in retirement. We keep our members informed with the plan's performance through quarterly fund fact sheets. We have an all-in expense ratio of 0.75%, over 16,000 members, and 337 million CI dollars in assets under management. If you would like to join or require further information, visit chamberpension.ky. And for information as it happens, follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Email admin@pensions.ky or call 745-7630. The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. Become a member today.
Are you tired of waiting in long lines at the pharmacy just to fill a prescription?
If what, child, let me tell you.
Well, now you can save time and money with ValueMed's online prescription service. Visit ValueMed's new website, valrx.com, and click the Refill Subscriptions button. Fill in your information and choose your preferred pickup location. Or email your prescription refills for ValueMed Walkers Road at rx-wr@valrx.com, and for ValueMed in Boddentown, email rx-bt@valrx.com. Say goodbye to the hassle of waiting in lines and hello to the convenience of online prescriptions with ValueMed Pharmacy. Visit valrx.com to place your orders today.
Heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and respiratory illnesses are among the top causes of death in Cayman every year. From June 3rd until July 31st, the Ministry of Health and Wellness will conduct the STEPS 2023 National Health Survey to better understand the prevalence of non-communicable diseases within our nation. Log on to www.gov.ky/steps to learn more.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. And thank you so much for your attention, your participation, and thanks to our guests as the members of the Electoral Boundary Commission, Chair Dr. Lisa Hanley, Ms. Adrian Webb, and fellow member Mr. Steve McField. The fact that our government and our citizens have, I believe, the confidence in your competence, but also your commitment to the country to be present in the last time and now to be appointed once again, it bodes well for what we have. Dr. Hanley, if I may ask, though, we're now where we are, and sometimes what happened this morning for some of us was a lifetime ago, much less what may have happened a few years ago. How did we get to where we are? Where are we, and where were we? And thanks again to Dr. Steve, for all of us for being a part of the discussion,
So in 2015, when we first got together to draw these boundaries, you had moved from what's called a block vote system to a single-member district system. So we were drawing the boundaries for the single-member district system for the first time. I'm going to leave it up to my colleagues to explain how it was decided to move to this system, but I will tell you that the system that you had in place, the block vote system, where somebody from Georgetown had 5 votes and somebody from West Bay had 4 votes, was a system that was deemed unfair by international standards, and the few countries that had that system, like Thailand, for example, had left it behind. The Cayman Islands was the last system, the last country to leave behind this system that had been deemed unfair.
Ms. Adrian, I mean, being last of the Mohicans doesn't necessarily be a bad thing, but help us, Mom.
Well, they felt that the people in Georgetown had more voting power than those in East End and North Side. They could only vote for one person, whereas initially Georgetown could vote for 4, I think, and at some point it even went up to 6 or 7. And West Bay could vote for 4 people, and Bordentown at that time was 3.
Then it went to 4. Right?
Yeah, then it went to 4. So it was basically felt that Georgetown had 7 times the political power of the one vote in East End and North Side, and it was felt that it was time to move to a better system that was more representative and what people thought was fairer, that every vote had the same balance and the same weight. And we did have a referendum. It was initially a move started by the people for a referendum, and it then became one that the government supported and put forward, which didn't really meet the required proportion of voters. So that meant it really failed. But the government changed, and they then voted in having one man, one vote, where everybody's vote was the same. You vote for one person in your constituency, and that was it.
So please allow me to make sure I did not misunderstand. There was a referendum to introduce the one man, one person, one vote.
Yes.
That failed. Right? But then the government came in, made a legislative change, thinking that they could do it. They had the numbers. They felt this was right, and they brought it in.
They brought it
whether
in
the public wanted it or not. Okay.
Well, I think the public sentiment was a lot of people wanted it.
No, but because of the referendum was what I meant.
Because of the referendum.
The public said no. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. And the reason why I'm not trying to disparage nor disrespect, would like our people to understand that the legislators have the power. This is an example of where they thought it was in the best interest of the country. They brought the motion, it passed, the law became the law, and this is where we are now.
Precisely.
So they did that, they can undo it, or they could amend, whichever. Right.
We vote them in, we've given them the power, but that's why we need to engage in a political process so that they know what the people want.
Yes, ma'am. If I might ask of you, you use the word weight relative to each elector's vote. Not a statistician, so I don't profess to know, but weighted average. If the elector is in East End, just for simple numbers, has 500 electors in East End, and in one of the electoral districts in, say, Georgetown, it's 1,000, right? Would not the voter, the elector in East End, on a weight, be twice the weight, Dr. Hanley, as the one in East End? 500 electors to one representative versus 1,000 in Georgetown to one representative. So is that equity? Is that parity?
So I mentioned the election mission reports put out by the Parliamentary Association, in which they point out precisely that situation where Bordentown East had something like 1,600, and the East End had constituency size of about, I don't remember off the top,
600, 500
something like that.
Right.
And they pointed out that actually the weight of a East Ender was double that of the voter who lived in Bordentown East. And that's why it was unfair, and that's why the constituencies should be drawn and be more equal in the number of potential voters in them.
Okay, so then again, I crave your indulgence so that I can understand, just in case anybody will ask me why I think I will have an informed perspective. We know the population of Cayman is just round numbers, say 25,000 electors, right? And one of the 4 districts in Bordentown, instead of having 1,000, maybe some have 1,200, some have 1,600, East End have 500, 600. If we were to look at that and reapportion, the intent is that we'll divide the number of electors by the number of constituencies, the 19, let's just say, comes out to equal as close to possible in each of the 19 electors. That's the objective?
That's correct. I'm going to change it slightly because it's 17 because of the 2 reserved seats.
Yes.
You're going, okay. And this is, I really appreciate that, because now of the 19, we got to take out 2, because it doesn't matter if Cayman Brac at present only has 2 voters, so they have 2,000, they still have the 2.
Yes.
So in the 7, okay, so help me to help the public to understand potentially what that could mean and how we would draw it. So maybe East End, would East End, for instance, electoral boundary shift from where it is now to encompass a bit more? What the electoral boundaries, right? Help us.
So that was alternative 1. You'll remember
Yes,
I described 3 alternatives.
Yes,
and the first alternative would be, okay, let's do what the international community tells us we should do. And let's draw all of these districts so that all of these constituencies, so none deviate by more than 10%. The first thing that would have to happen is East End and North Side would have to be combined. However,
right,
like I said,
yes,
the population, when you combine them, was still, now it's slightly overpopulated, and you wouldn't just be combining those 2 districts. You'd also be having to take out some voters from Northside and put them into Bordentown. So you don't, I mean, that's a possibility. That's what the international community is recommending. But we also believe that we should be paying attention to additional boundaries, and that's why we added alternatives to this. We want to consider a number of alternatives, that being only one of them.
All right. And this is why I think, again, we as people need to pay attention, because as one of our listeners weighs in his share, we're speaking to our electoral boundaries commissioners, Dr. Hanley, Ms. Adrienne, and Dr. Steve. This individual says, why are we seeking to increase the politicians rather than decrease civil servants? More civil servants to work under the elected officials. Again, outside of your remit, but again, seeing how, I don't want to say conflating sometimes, but how we're looking at the constitutional and maybe not fully appreciating the remit of the Electoral Boundaries Commission. This is where participation in our discussions will help us. International standards aside, can we in Cayman do what is best for us? If going to the premise that we want to preserve our traditional districts, create craftsmen that is, if Sir Alden wouldn't mind me borrowing his word, bespoke to Cayman.
This is why we're having the public hearings. We want to hear from people who tell us what they think is important.
Yeah. And we can tell you so that forms the report to inform our parliamentarians.
We're not doing this just to entertain ourselves in the evening. We're actually listening to people in order to take into account what they have to say.
I'm hoping, Ms. Adrian.
Well, there is already a carve-out in the Constitution for Cayman Brac,
yes,
which guarantees them 2 seats. And a similar thing could be done to ensure that both East End and North Side have at least 1 seat each.
So if we did that, and let's say we didn't amend that section, so Cayman Brac, Little Cayman remains with 2, even though there are 6 districts as we know it. Would that mean that on Grand Cayman, then the 5 that are there, we'll have 7 sort of defined representatives out of the X number, the 19, or would then Cayman Brac, Little Cayman be redrawn to be 1 from them, 1 from West Bay, 1 from Georgetown, 1 from East End, 1 from Northside, 1 from Georgetown, 1 from Bordentown?
I very much doubt that, but that's that's a constitutional change as well.
Again, exactly.
Because they're already protected in the Constitution. I don't think that will go down too well with the Cayman Brackers.
So we'll end up with 7 sort of the 19 that are assigned. Potentially.
I mean, that is what I would think that you would, if the traditional boundaries, if the traditional districts are very important, I would think that you would want to guarantee each of the traditional districts at least one seat.
Okay. And this is where these discussions. All right, we're going to take the next break. When we return, please share with us as much as we can to understand and maybe remind us of some of the upcoming public meetings and how we can help to facilitate not just attendance but participation. All right, stay tuned for Talk Today.
Busy, busy, busy. Feel like there's not just enough hours in the day. Savannah Pharmacy, service to make your life easier. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. And pickup is just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy, wholesome values with modern conveniences.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
CUC is committed to cleaner energy for Grand Cayman. Their strategy is aligned with the future needs of our country. The CUC team is working to create a sustainable energy future for us all. Using a mix of rooftop and utility-scale solar, their goal is to bring electricity costs down without compromising network safety or reliability. CUC has a plan and they are ready. Follow their journey at www.roadstorenewables.ky to learn more.
You deserve a unique vacation this year, one with easy non-stop flights from Cayman. Cayman Airways offers more non-stop flights to and from the Cayman Islands than any other airline. Now you can add Panama and Los Angeles to your travel bucket list. Skip the hassle of connecting flights. Panama is just a 2-hour non-stop flight from Cayman. And Los Angeles? Get there in less than 5 hours non-stop aboard Cayman Airways. Call 949-2311 or visit CaymanAirways.com to book your Los Angeles or Panama getaway today.
TD, you hear about that March for Jesus that they having worldwide? Yeah, happening in Cayman too, 27th day of May 2023. Well, that's coming up here soon now. Let me tell you, I got my sneakers. I heard about it too. And I hear that people can walk, you could ride your bicycle, you could use scooter, and drive your car, any form of transportation you could use. Well, they also providing transportation from the outlying districts, eastern, north side. Yeah. They gotta make sure that everybody that won't participate can be there. So what time we gotta be down there? So they gotta be at the 7 Mile Public Beach at 2 p.m. because the march can start at 3 p.m. So you get there for 2 p.m. Okay. And then what we gonna have up in town? I heard something they have in town too. Oh, big praise and worship session afterward too. Oh yeah, I heard right of then the legislative assembly steps. Oh, I can't wait to praise and lift hands to God. Boy, I tell you, I go to march for Jesus. Me too.
Backed by popular demand, the Department of Agriculture is hosting its 4-day home gardening course on Saturdays from the 6th to the 27th of May from 9 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. This course is ideal for backyard farmers seeking to add value to their crops or individuals interested in starting or improving their garden at home. Seats are limited and the cost is $50 per person, so register today. Visit the DOA website, doa.gov.ky, or their Facebook or Instagram page at Agriculture Cayman to register.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. And thanks again to Dr. Lisa Hanley, Ms. Adrienne Webb, and Dr. Steve McField for, as I shared, not just accepting the reappointment, but coming and chatting and hoping that we see the importance. Now, maybe someone see it. Could I respectfully ask first as we continue our next discussion, why is this important? I mean, the average voter, some would say, well, it's going to be an election, name's going to be in the ballot, and we're going to go vote, and they're going to do what they want anyway, because and that's the apathy that some of us have adopted. And then there will be some who are very strong proponents, and they're going to be very vocal, but maybe misguided or misinformed. What's the importance of this process so that at the end of the day, our electoral boundaries will reflect this thing that we're going to eventually adopt, change, amend, or just, be a part of?
We want to find the right balance between drawing constituencies that are very fair in terms of the numbers and constituencies that reflect the history and the culture and the views of what the history and the culture is in this country. And we need the help of the public to help us balance things like, should you allow constituencies that are underpopulated in order to respect traditional boundaries. And so I think it's more important in the end that you do things like vote, but if you have a stake, and I think you should have a stake in how we go about balancing these various factors that we have to take into account, you should come and tell us what you believe and why you believe it, because we will take it into account.
If I then may ask, as you're looking at this process, is this something for all of us as voters, with great respect? Whether you're a civil servant, whether you're retired, whether you're the sole business owner, there are some of us who may shy away publicly because maybe we have the historical message that you're a civil servant, you can't attend these things, this is about politics. Or is this for all voters initially?
So that's a complicated question for me, because I've not heard of the situation where civil servants are not supposed to speak out. So I'm going to ask my colleagues to answer that, because
Thank you. I just asked
unusual.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, politics impacts everybody's life, whether they're a civil servant, non-civil servant, whether they're a street worker, working in a shop. No matter, as an individual human being, politics affects you. You have a right to vote. Therefore, I think you have a right to voice your opinion.
Okay.
And that is why I encourage everyone, civil servant, whoever they are, non-civil servant, to come out, hear what the commissioners have to say, give your views. They'll all be taken into account, and we will make the best recommendation that we think is appropriate.
Okay. Other than the individual, the individual in the country, irrespective of their immigration status or the registered voter, whether eligible or not, is this then just for that person's own interests and edification? They can attend whether you are a work permit holder, and to what extent that input factors into your report?
Well, we have to consider eligible and potential voters. But if you're a resident in a country and you have the country's interests at heart, I recommend that you come out too.
Yeah.
And we'll listen to what you have to say. If it's relevant, it'll be taken into account.
Yeah.
But wherever you live, I think you should have an interest in what's happening in that country and keep yourself informed. So we welcome them, whether they're residents, workers, whatever.
Okay.
Everyone is entitled to come.
I share your view that we live and work here. Let's make it as best. Again, just for clarity and we know the work of the Electoral Boundaries Commission. We know some of the constitutional matters. There are those who would say, for instance, well, if you're a PR holder or otherwise, you should be eligible to be registered to vote. And just for clarity, does this fall within your remit to say yes, they should be included, or is this beyond in relation to the eligibility of who can be a registered elector?
This is certainly beyond our remit.
You made that clear, but just for
very
clarity.
definitely.
Because Sterling, the qualifications for an elector is set out in section 61 and 62 of the Constitution, and it makes it quite clear. So, but that's not what we were asked to do.
Right.
That's beyond us. We're far away from that. But it's very interesting. The some of the things that you raised before about the the permanent residents versus the work permit holder. It seems to me that if you are interested in integrating into a society, integrating into and adopting its culture and its heritage, that it should be a requirement, not ought to, it should be a requirement that you show some interest into not only the historical and cultural development, but the political development of the country as well.
Okay. We have a comment and a question from one of our listeners, if I may read it verbatim. This listener shares, other than a bicameral system, such as a Senate or House of Representatives, is there an effective way of separating the two important roles of parliamentarian and district representative? Presently, it seems that MPs' time is more taken up by district/constituency issues versus national issues. Now, two questions. Please, answer if you can. But is that within your sort of remit as well?
No, that's not within our remit. As a political scientist, I can tell you how it's dealt with in a lot of countries. I mean, the job of the lower house chambers is usually involves constituency service, but usually they're given money and staff to handle that. And I'm not sure that it looks like here there's so many personal demands made on the MPs. This doesn't happen in a lot of other countries because there's a large staff that's solely responsible for constituency service.
Again, this is where maybe as a populace we become.
And we had a bicameral system, starting at one time between 1831 and 1863. And that worked then. We had an upper house and a lower house. I think it was after 1863 that we went back to the unicameral system. But what we were interested to see what people think about that. Of course, that's not our remit. But I know that one politician during the constitutional talks tried to get that in, and he was unsuccessful. And by the way, when you were discussing about the reasons for the changes, one politician also has stated that the one man, one vote, single member constituency system was changed to defeat him. To
the allegation has been made, yes.
To defeat him, to take the power away from him, from having four people in his geographical district vote for him.
Yeah.
But perhaps the district councils might fill that role.
Yes.
They are in the constitution, but they haven't been implemented. But if you had a district council in the areas, that would go a long way, I think, to where people could go and voice their opinions, and they could help with district matters.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't always need to go to their MP, who could then focus on more national matters.
Right. But I think, too, maybe that partly speaks to, as I look at the word in the Constitution, there shall be an advisory district council. It's one sentence, and very little, then we have the law that brought it in. So it may be for us as the populace to take more initiative and stop leading for the politicians.
I would agree with that. Get behind it and start demanding that we have an advisory council. And if enough people speak up, I think the politicians will have to listen.
It's the only organization in the Constitution that hasn't been activated. And Sterling, I believe that is because of the attitudes of most of our politicians. They do not, once they get elected, they do not want to hear from you what you have to say. In other words, they refuse to take advice from anybody who is outside of their group, and that is the reason why the word advisory.
Yes.
And then when some people ask me, well, do you have to take advice? Say you're bound to take the advice, but you don't have to put it into it. But that is one of the reasons why it has not moved and from where it is now in 2009.
Ms. Adrienne?
Well, I think the people have a voice, and they can certainly speak to their representatives and demand that it be put in place.
I think this is where perhaps the increased attendance at your meetings maybe takes a bit of courage by some of us to show by example we're there to be informed and perhaps to share our view, as opposed to what may be the underlying perception that we have. Well, if we attend, there'll be an assumption and an association with consequences flowing, right? All right, we've got the news break. Do you wish to rejoin us after? And then we can take a call or two, and then maybe remind us of some of the meetings. All right, we'll be so amenable. Okay, join us right after. We'll sing in unison when we return.
Satisfaction is guaranteed 24 hours a day, whether it's music or information.
From Grand Cayman to Cayman Brac to Little Cayman, we've got you covered.
You ever hear a thing like that?
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
Your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
Brought to you by Tropical Plaza on Smith Road.
With your latest headlines, I'm Felicia Rankin-Sollins. The Cayman Islands Health Services Authority has earned the most prestigious hospital accreditation from the Joint Commission International. The Joint Commission Gold Seal of Approval is recognized by the international healthcare community as a symbol of quality that reflects a healthcare organization's commitment to providing safe and high-quality patient care. In international news, Queen Elizabeth II's funeral and events during the period of national mourning cost the government an estimated £162 million, the Treasury has said. The state funeral on September 19, 2022 came 11 days after her death. During that period of national mourning, hundreds of thousands of people visited Westminster where she was lying in state. The Home Office spent £74 million and Department of Culture, Media and Sport spent £57 million. An IT worker sued her boss for sexual harassment after believing his use of the letters XX, YY, and question marks in an email asking for more information was a coded way of asking for sexual relations. Karina Gasparova also claimed that when her boss renamed a work file with his initials AJG, it was an abbreviation of a jumbo genital. The Employment Tribunal at London Central Court said Ms. Gasparova's perception of events was skewed. Her claims were rejected. These are your headlines. I'm Felicia Rankin-Sollins.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman. Your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
Brought to you by Tropical Plaza on Smith Road.
Ro Variety, centrally located in Tropical Plaza on Smith Road, carrying a wide range of household items, bathroom accessories, towels, clocks, handbags, clothes, shoes, jewelry, and more, and more, and more. You can buy from the big box retailers or support local. The better deals come from shopping local. Ro Variety Store, Tropical Plaza, Smith Road. Telephone 924-9553.
Between the traffic, the meetings, kids' activities, there just isn't enough time. Best Health Pharmacy was a game changer. Not only are they centrally located on Eastern Avenue, but they deliver prescriptions for free anywhere in Georgetown and West Bay. I could not believe it. When my prescription ran out, they ran it back to me. Best Health Pharmacy, located at Crown Square Plaza on Eastern Avenue, across from Edie's Decor, offering free prescription delivery anywhere in Georgetown and West Bay. Call 949-1301 or WhatsApp your prescription to 924-5358. Best Health Pharmacy. Your health, your convenience is their priority.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Good afternoon. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us, and thanks to Dr. Lisa Hanley, Ms. Adrienne Weber, and Dr. Steve McField. As we look at our electoral boundaries, Dr. Hanley, if I may ask, is it then that, on a balance of probabilities, the likely expectation that unless something is shifted within our parliament, that our boundaries at some point will will be redrawn to ensure that parity amongst the electors, or whether it's before or after the next election, given the operating system that we have, this potential would be the outcome and the consequence of this review?
Certainly, we are going to recommend adjustments to the boundaries. The Parliament is not required to adopt them. I would think that if they don't adopt them this time, there's going to be a point in time in which the population variations are so dramatic that they would have to accept change.
And the reason, thank you. The reason why I want to ask that again is so that the people listening would appreciate this is not an academic exercise. This is something that is quite possible, could be a consequence. And your district, what your electoral district looks like now, could be enlarged. It will be adjusted slightly because of the shift in your population. So with that in mind, hopefully people will come out and confront that for themselves, ask the implications of that, and may even invite their parliamentarians to make whatever debating contributions to amend or change as representative of what the particular electorate wants.
I think that's right. I think that there's a good chance that most of the boundaries will be adjusted at least slightly, and people should be interested in this.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Some of us don't appreciate that with our paychecks, we get a pension deduction, a deduction for health insurance. Do we factor that in as part of our income? Now, if you make $1,000 a month and you get $100 deduction for each, you're only getting in $800 to take home. But if your employer is going to pay that, you're taking home $1,000, you'll be very, very concerned when you're missing the $200. This is no different on principle. All right. So, Mr. Adrian, from that perspective, if I might ask you and Dr. Steve, are our voters becoming somewhat apathetic? We look at the traditional high 80% turnout. The last election, we had a little bit lower of a number, whatever the reasons. Are our voters getting complacent, apathetic? It's a subjective answer, but in your considered experience,
Well, I do think they get a bit apathetic between elections.
Okay.
Once elections are near, they get really excited and they go and they vote. But in between, they seem to have the idea that we put them in, let them do the job. And then when it comes time, if we're happy, we put them back in. If we're not happy, we take them out.
So with that, and I believe many of us would agree with that, Dr. Steve, but with that mindset, how is it that our parliamentarians are going to get from us if we don't give to them, and then the collective we as the electorate, accuse, there's a special interest, whether it's the chamber, whether it's the developers or the hotels or whatever, and yet if that's the voice that is being echoed constantly, of course the voter may not be on the table.
Yeah, but you must remember now that what has happened historically here with political, when you study the political history, it has always been a unequal system. Similar to what let me say that the old system represented what the political system had been for hundreds of years. In that system, the electorate voted for the person who had the power. It was the merchant people that had the power, and he voted for them. They ran the country too. They were the powerful people, and they sat in the legislature and they made the laws that protect them, and the people accepted that. Those kind of people now have left the merchant side, and now they are become administrators, and so forth. So the same relationship exists between them and the people. They have never had a people that they interacted with on a one-to-one basis on an equal level, similar to what we're trying to do with the boundaries. It has always been, we have the power, you vote for us, this is what we will give you. If you don't vote for us, we will not give you this. Take one example. When I was young, I remember my family saying to me that, well, they're not going to get any beef this year. And I say, what happened? They say, because the guy that we wanted to vote, the guy that asked us to vote for him, brought the cow from the grass piece and tied it up by the bar. And he told them, if you vote for me, you can butcher. But if you don't vote for me, I'm taking it back to the grass piece. And that's how it has been. It has been. We're not going to enlighten you so that you can have an equal conversation with us and act with us on an equal political basis. We are going to keep you down the same way the economic system that keeps us apart. Mm-hmm. And that is how the average voter in Cayman has continued. So what the voter goes to the poll to do? He doesn't go to the poll to vote for the issues. He goes to punish or to reward.
Mm-hmm. If I might, as an academic, ask you, and this is perhaps beyond it, but sometimes I don't think that we make ourselves in the space that's given to us to benefit from the people who are in our circle. So go on the premise that we're in a lecture and you share with us. We look at some political systems where as people go into a space, there's a strong representation of maybe a particular nationality, a particular geographical area, and the importance of that and its impact on the politics, the policies, and even how the people respond. So in the Cayman context, with respect to our districts, our electoral districts, any concerns that as we gravitate to cementing more and more the one man, one vote, the districts as they are, that we could end up with a more of a homogeneous component in some geographical areas as opposed to the national perspective. And I'm thinking of some countries around the world where there are ethnic minorities in certain areas, whether in the US or other parts. Could that play out given the population distribution and the particular demographic profile as we've seen from the last census?
It's true that some districts will have more representatives in Parliament than other districts, and maybe those districts, if you don't have a more universal view, would get more what we call pork barreling. They would get more rewards than other districts because there are not as many representatives from the area. You could put in place a system that, for example, directly elected a president who would represent the whole of the island. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's one way to ensure that the whole island is considered. I don't know Caymanian politics well enough to be able to tell you if that would work or if your representatives do have in mind the whole island when they're making decisions, or even if that's a good thing, or if different districts have different needs. I think my colleagues would be better placed to answer that.
Respectful. I was thinking from the academic perspective because, some must study different things, some must read and try to understand, but we see other systems across the globe, and if I may understand, when you say directly elected, that would be akin to a national vote where if it's the president or the political leader, all the voters would vote for that person. And these are constitutional changes, but these are things that we discuss as part of our educational initiatives.
Yes, so this would be the difference between a Westminster system like you have in the UK and a presidential system like you have in the US.
Right. And I don't think that would work as certain because if you have a large vote for the premier, and the premier now has to command the respect of the other people. Remember now, he has to choose the ministers for the cabinet and so forth. He's first among equals, and they don't like him. They don't like what the general public has chosen. What's going to happen then?
Right. Okay, Mr. Adrian, you want to wait because I have a question as well.
Well, really, we've had some representations about a national vote or at-large members being elected. I'm not sure which one would suit us best. I think it's something that we would have to look at and take the public's pulse and see how it will work in our system.
Right.
It works in some places it doesn't work, and I'm not sure how it will work here. But depending, maybe we could take a poll or the public's pulse and see what the majority of people think about it and what they would like, and put it forward to the Constitutional Commission and have it sort of talked about and see what's decided.
That level of public discussion with a view of, well, what if we did this? What would that look like? So that it's not about a political push in a direction, but more of what is in the national interest. But
it has been raised to us
yes.
on several occasions, a national vote or at-large members.
Right.
So it's out there in the public, and some have voiced that they're not happy with the change from the old system to one man, one vote, and they'd like to go back. And people are thinking about it, so it's something that we have to think about as well and consider at some point.
And then I guess this is just make sure I didn't misunderstand, hopefully read it correctly, would be for our parliamentarians, whether now or in the future, for them to debate.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It is not the remit of this electoral boundary. We can note all the comments that have been made to us, and we can put them as an addendum to a report.
Yes.
But it's the parliamentarians who will have to go ahead, move ahead with that, and decide what the electoral system is going to be.
Okay.
That's not what we have been mandated to do.
All right. Well, I certainly appreciate your time. We have one final break. With great respect, as we return, can you tell us about some of your upcoming meetings, how we can participate, and the like? Would that be fine? We only have a few minutes left for today's program, but still good information to share, so stay tuned.
A caring and community spirit, cherished family and cultural values. These are some of the things that still embodies the Caymanian way of life in the Eastern Districts today. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, located in Countryside Shopping Village, is delighted to offer products and services of real value. Whether it's catering to your family's medical needs or carrying apparel, gifts, and beauty products, Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they're always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
How can you make a classic BLT sandwich even better? Well, by adding tuna. Wow. The land meets the sea in Subway's new sandwich, the Tuna BLT, available for a limited time. The Tuna BLT is exploding with flavor. Imagine crispy, juicy bacon strips on top of tuna, fresh lettuce, and slices of tomato, topped with your favorite sauce and choice of freshly baked bread. Enjoy the best of both worlds with the Tuna BLT from Subway. Subway, eat fresh.
The best foundation you can wear is glowing, healthy skin. The offices of dermatologist Dr. Wayne Porter specialize in enhancing your skin's well-being. Whether you're seeking advanced skincare, including any skin cancers, Botox, filler, cosmetic skin enhancements, or simply looking to reduce wrinkles, Dr. Porter offers a full-service dermatology and dermatological surgery practice. For more information, email drporterkman@gmail.com or call 946-9020. That is 946-9020.
Freedom, Cayman Rack. Freedom, Little Cayman. Soft breezes, blue waters, no traffic. Unwind and rejuvenate your mind, body, and soul. Sister Island Staycations, a taste of freedom. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
You deserve a unique vacation this year, one with easy non-stop flights from Cayman. Cayman Airways offers more non-stop flights to and from the Cayman Islands than any other airline. Now you can add Panama and Los Angeles to your travel bucket list. Skip the hassle of connecting flights. Panama is just a 2-hour non-stop flight from Cayman. And Los Angeles? Get there in less than 5 hours non-stop aboard Cayman Airways. Call 949-2311 or visit CaymanAirways.com to book your Los Angeles or Panama getaway today.
The Hawkwill Theatre will come alive as Cayman National Dance Company presents the 35th season of dance. Its Emerald Celebration, an extravaganza of repertoire pieces, new creations, and remastered dances. Dance should be shared with all who live and breathe, so you do not want to miss the 35th season of dance at the Hawkwill Theatre. Friday, May 19th, 6:30 p.m. for the gala. Cost is $75. Saturday, May 20th, 11 a.m. matinee, $10. Saturday, May 20th, 7 p.m. and Sunday, May 21st, 5 p.m. $35 for adults and $15 CI for children under 15. Tickets are available at Radiance Dance Studio, Audiophile Cayman, and Winner Circle Sports, or by calling 926-1826. Sponsored by Cayman National, CNCF, ARC Directors, Water Authority, CUC, Brit K, and Radio Cayman.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
And good afternoon. Welcome back. Thanks very much for joining us. I trust and pray that you benefited, from this attempt at sharing some information. I'm certainly grateful to Dr. Hanley, Ms. Adriana, and Dr. Steve for sharing with us. Mr. Adriana, if you would, as you shared, I think as good as my company is, you probably prefer to be in your garden than to be here, right? So you are available as the commissioners. There are some meetings coming up.
Yes.
Would you share with us, Mom?
Okay. Tonight, Thursday, May 18, we're at in Bordentown West, Bordentown East, at the Theodore and McCall Primary School from 7 till 9 p.m. There's no meeting tomorrow night, but on Monday, May 22nd, we're in West Bay, and that's for the whole of West Bay, and that's at the Sir John A. Cumber School Hall in West Bay.
At what time, Mom?
7 p.m. to 9 p.m.
7, okay.
On Tuesday, May 23rd, we're off to Kimmenbrack, and we'll be at the Aston Rudder Center from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. We're back in Grand Cayman on Wednesday, May 24th, and we're out at Northside, at the Northside Civic Center, and that's from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. On Thursday, May 25th, we're at East End Civic Center, and that's from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. And we're encouraging everyone to come out to these meetings. We'd like to hear your views and to hear what you have to say to us. Whatever you say to us, we'll take into account, and comments on what we can't change or what is under remit, we'll certainly make a note of it to pass on to the parliamentarians. But we encourage everyone to come out on those nights.
There's an additional meeting during the day if you can't make
it
in
yes,
the evening.
There's
next
on
Wednesday.
Wednesday. On Wednesday, May 24th, there's a lunchtime meeting at the Georgetown Public Library from 12 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. And anyone who can't make it to these other meetings, you are most welcome. And anyone who wants to see us again, you're welcome to come as well.
If I might ask, and only on appreciating that some of us, we don't want to go somewhere because we don't have anything to wear. We find all sorts of reasons. I mean, I haven't gone to church in 500 years because, I can't get my hair done in the morning. We find excuses, and hopefully that's not too offensive to say, an attempt at being jovial. But the expectation of the attendee at the meeting, what are we expecting for them? Come after work, take a shower and put on your shorts and slippers if you want. It's not formal. You just come. What are we expecting from the attendees? How do we dress? Just anything that would encourage us to come and attend.
Come as you are. We'll welcome you. If you're rushing in from work, if you're in your garden and you want to just come, however you are, we want to hear your views. We will welcome you in whatever state you're in.
And is it where we can ask questions so that we can maybe understand certain things? Because just today's discussion alone, there are a lot of questions that seem to be constitutional, and many of us may assume, well, if it's constitutional, you're elected under Boundaries Commission, it must be one and the same, so we can get clarification as to whether it's within your remit. Is it that we can make suggestions? Well, why don't you do this? The national voter. Is it all those things?
Well, all questions are welcomed.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them we won't be able to deal with because they're not in our remit.
Mm-hmm.
Our remit is strictly looking at the boundaries and making adjustments according to the population growth.
Okay.
A lot of the comments we've had so far have been on the Constitution.
Yes.
That things that will require constitutional change. Those we can't do anything about, but we could certainly note them and pass them on to the parliamentarians.
Yes.
And members are quite free to voice their opinions to the parliamentarians as well and tell them how they feel.
Mm-hmm.
The more people who tell them, the more response they'll get.
All right. We said population growth. And just for clarity, are we looking at the physical size of the population, the numbers in that particular electoral boundary, or are we talking about the number of electors, voters?
Well, we're basically talking about registered voters and potential eligible ones, people who are becoming 18, those who qualify then to vote. So that's the numbers we're really looking at, but that has also grown quite a bit.
Indeed. So just forgive me, and I'm not trying to be pedantic nor in any way improper, but if in a district, let's use the Bodden Town district, we know that's been a fast growing district for many a year now, and in that district presumably there are voters, numbers that have increased, potential voters, but also people who've moved in that may never become voters for whatever reason. That population there is separate and distinct from the electors in terms of the district numbers and how it's drawn up.
So the Constitution requires us to take into account potentially eligible voters. So we're using the census, and we're using the census count of Caymanians over the age of 15.
Okay.
So we're not counting non-Caymanians when we draw boundaries, and we're not counting just registered voters.
Okay. I appreciate that, and just again, maybe these were questions that somebody want to ask, but ask them yourselves. And this is where attendance at the meetings would be helpful to, us to understand better. Dr. Steve?
Yeah, our mandate is quite narrow in scope, but you are right. The Bodden Town area has been the largest area where the population growth is exceeding the imaginations. I mean, even Dr. Hadley said she was surprised to see in 8 years to see the changes that were made, and that is because of the immigration into the country of a lot of people, and two is because it's the area where Caymanians can now still afford to buy a land and build a house or an apartment. It is still affordable, because on the other side of the island, and south side of the island, and the north side of the island, and in Georgetown, that would be impossible to purchase property. And the other thing about it is it seems to me that people are going in that direction to try to retrieve some of the things they have lost, and that is the old tradition. I noticed a couple of I've been going up to the eastern part of the island a couple of Sundays ago, and the people there that are going out there for recreation on the Sundays are 3 times as many as went. And then I noticed that Caymanians are doing that to Cayman Brac also. And I was wondering, why are they going to Cayman Brac every weekend and every holiday? It's because that represents what Cayman used to be like, what they saw, how the pace of life and the laid backness, and that's what they're trying to recapture. And I think that's also one of the reasons why they moved to that part of the island, because it's impossible for Caymanians to live on the north side of the island. Because when we went to some of these subdivisions, and we visited a lot of the subdivisions, I was told that some apartments, they're 1-bedroom apartments on that side of the island, it's like $750,000
for 400 square feet.
So so the average Caymanian cannot afford. He could not even qualify to own that. So the place that he qualifies to be able to at least put put his foot on the ground that belongs to him is Southeast.
Okay. Before I ask Dr. Hanley for some final thoughts, Ms. Adrienne, so ask you.
Well, I just want to encourage the people to come out. The attendance so far hasn't been great. We'd like to hear more views, so we encourage people to come out to the meetings. They're being advertised on Radio Cayman, on social media, so check and see, and come and let us hear your views. We welcome them, and we'll certainly take note of them.
Okay. Dr. Hanley?
I just want to second my colleague and say, please come out to the public hearings. Let us know what you think about the alternatives that we're grappling with. If traditional districts are important to you, we need to know this before we begin this exercise.
Well, thank you to you again for sharing, for making yourselves available not just on in our programs, but to the public in the evenings when you travel across the Grand Cayman and over to the Sister Islands. A very safe and enjoyable trip, and we're looking forward to your report in the summer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
To our listeners, please join us again tomorrow. Start the day off right with Mr. Art for the record and come back for Talk Today. Our good friends from the Department of Labor and Pensions will be our guests. Until then, my friends, be blessed.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. And Cayman Airways. Call them on 949-2311 to book your nonstop flights to Los Angeles and Panama.
Here is where tradition never dies. This is your radio, Cayman.